And yesterday we started looking at the suttas on how to remove ill will or resentment, as it is called here. And I think this is one of those great suttas that is very practical and very useful for almost anyone in this world. And actually it is surprising. People often find it very difficult to deal with ill will and anger and these things, how to overcome it. But actually I think it isn't really all that difficult if you apply yourself in the right way, you do the right thing. It's something that anyone can do. You don't have to be particularly smart or whatever. What you have to do, rather, the most difficult thing in Buddhism is always the idea of having that commitment, that perseverance in these things. That is actually the most difficult thing on any spiritual path. The commitment, the perseverance, the understanding, the teachings is not that hard. They're actually fairly straightforward. You can, of course, intellectualize them, all this kind of stuff, which often misses the point. But the actual practice, it is really that commitment and perseverance that is so important. So we had a look at a couple of ways of dealing with ill will, and the first two ways here are all about how to focus on the good aspects of other people and look away from the bad qualities in people. It's up to us what we choose to look at. We can train our attention to see the good things and focus on that. That's kind of the point here. So let's now look at the third way. There's five ways altogether, depending on the type of person we are dealing with. So now we're going to look at number 3. And this is how it goes in this particular discourse. And how, friends, should resentment be removed towards the person whose bodily behavior and verbal behavior are impure, but who from time to time gains an opening of the mind, placidity of mind? Suppose there is a little water in a puddle, then a person might arrive afflicted and oppressed by the heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. He would think, this little bit of water is in the puddle. If I try to drink it with my cupped hands or a vessel, I will stir it up, disturb it, and make it undrinkable. Let me get down on all fours, suck it up like a cow, and depart. He then gets down on all fours, sucks it up, the water like a cow, and departs. So too, when a person's bodily behavior and verbal behavior are impure, but from time to time he gains an opening of the mind, placidity of mind. On that occasion, one should not attend to the impurity of his bodily and verbal behavior, but should instead attend to the opening of the mind, placidity of mind. He gains from time to time. In this way, resentment towards that person should be removed. So this is the cow behavior. How to act like a cow so as to remove resentment. First of all, let's have a quick look at what is the meaning of some of these terms here, because it may not be very obvious to you. So first of all, obviously this is a person whose behavior isn't all that wonderful. Bad bodily behavior, bad verbal behavior. But from time to time, they gain this opening of the mind, placidity of mind. And this is, once you know how the suttas, how the word of the Buddha works, it's quite clear what that means. An opening of the mind is the opposite of the hindrances, the nivaranas, the opening. Vivarana is the Pali word for this, opposite of nivarana. So it means that the mind is free from those oppressions inside that are the 5 hindrances. I haven't talked about the 5 hindrances, but these are the things that block our progress in meditation. Ill will, sensual desire, tiredness, sloth and torpor, restlessness and doubt. So these are the opposites. So sometimes you gain this freedom. The mind is free from those things. And when the mind is free from those things, it is placid, it is calm, it is beautiful. And when you see somebody who has a mind state like that, it will often be reflected also in the way they are and the way they act. So you can often tell the person's inner state just by observing them. So here is someone who has sometimes actually gets this good quality of mind despite the bad external behavior. And this is kind of strange. And sometimes people think this is really unfair. They look around the world and see all these scallywags who who might be wealthy and famous, but do all kind of dodgy stuff. You can barely open a newspaper, or I guess the same thing is on TV as well. Before you see all these kind of people doing all these dodgy things in the world, and yet somehow some of these people, they still get good internal states of mind. So how can that be? Why does the world seem on the surface to be so unfair and unreasonable? And of course the reason, again, and here the Buddhist point of view is very powerful in explaining why these things happen. The reason is because our conditioning is very deep. It goes a long way into the past. It has to do also with past lives from a Buddhist point of view. And because of that, we are so complex. Yeah, there's so many cross currents kind of moving through us. So we may have done a lot of good karma in the past that allows us to feel peace in this life, but at the same time having been influenced more recently in a negative way, so that we do bad things as a consequence. So things aren't really unfair, it's just that things are complicated. That's really what's going on here. So then, when a person has only, even if they have only these small little qualities, we are to focus on those small qualities. That is what the simile is about. The simile of you get down, there's only a small puddle of water, remember again, the person comes, you are thirsty, you are parched, you are wearied, you are hot. This is like a simile for anger, metaphor for anger. So you come there and you see this tiny little bit of water here. And of course that water is going to alleviate that thirst. That's the good qualities in that person. It's going to alleviate your anger and make you calm down and become peaceful. But there isn't much scope for error. You've got to get down on all fours and suck that water up. Be very precise about it. If you go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, you're going to get dirt instead of water. That's kind of the bad qualities in that person. You've got to focus very precisely on those good qualities that are there. That's what the simile refers to. And what this means, what is interesting about this, is that it shows the extent we should go to actually see the positive in other people. It is very easy to think that we can just have compassion, We see negative quality in somebody, okay, we'll just have compassion instead, we know, you had a difficult upbringing, you had a hard life, and so we have compassion for you. But the Buddha, actually, what he's saying here is that we should try to have metta, this positive feeling about others, the friendliness, the loving kindness, the goodwill. We should put a lot of emphasis in trying to get that first of all. That's very interesting here, because I think the point here is that when we have goodwill towards somebody, when we feel positive about other people, it actually feels happy inside. You feel really good about that. You can't really go wrong with having goodwill towards somebody. It's always a positive contribution to your spiritual practice and also to the people around you. So for this reason, metta is very powerful in building up good qualities inside of us. Whereas if you go down the way of compassion, then it's much more difficult to give rise to positive feelings with compassion. Compassion can sometimes make you feel a bit flat, because you are seeing the suffering, you're seeing the negative qualities. Yes, you are forgiving it, but there's some kind of residue which doesn't really, it's much more difficult to find that happiness through compassion. So because of that, it's actually, the Buddha is making here the powerful point. Let's go, not the Buddha, it's actually Venerable Sariputta, but the importance of seeing the good qualities. We should go really out on a limb, so to speak, go as far as we can to see these good qualities in other people. That's what this really is about. So there you are. So that is the person who only has some good qualities, but they are still there, and we try to see them, and we try to rejoice in that. And we think, and actually it is quite wonderful. I have to admit, you look at people, being a Buddhist monk, one of the great blessings of being a Buddhist monk is that you meet so many good people in the world. Whenever I travel anywhere, wherever I go around the world, and these days I travel quite a lot, I get invitations everywhere. And when you meet people, they're always good people, always kind-hearted, generous. And what a wonderful thing that is, to be able to see all that goodness in the world, to be able to focus on that is a wonderful thing here. There is much more goodness in the world than sometimes you get the impression, if you watch the news, you get the impression that the world is a pretty bad place. But actually, when it comes down to individuals, to ordinary people in the world, there is a lot of kindness there, a lot of good-heartedness, and that is something to be rejoiced in. It is not obvious that should be the case. It is often the forces in the world tend to drag us down instead. But here are people actively trying to lift themselves up, trying to live good lives and to go against the current of the world. And what a marvelous thing that is when that happens. And there is a lot of that going on in the world, and it's something to be rejoiced in and to feel really happy about. Anyway, so that is the looking at the meta side of things, looking at the positive side of people. Of course, sometimes you cannot see any good things in people. Yes, occasionally you might meet people and you find it very hard to see any good qualities in them. And what do we do then? Yeah, this is what the next simile here is about. And of course, when you cannot really see any good qualities in somebody, then the way to go about it is then compassion becomes the right tool to use. Because it cannot really have metta towards somebody when you can't see the good qualities. You've got to have a different approach. And this is where compassion can be used. And this is what the next one here is about. Now, one of the things to be aware of, if you cannot see any good qualities in somebody else, it doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't got any good qualities. Yeah, remember that our personal judgment or our personal perception of other people is conditioned. It is our own bias, yeah, our own way of looking at things. So remember that. Remember this is just your perception of this other person. And that is an important thing to remember, because if you remember that, it allows you also to change your perception later on when you see different qualities in that person. If you solidify that perception too much, this person is bad, right? It's not that they have some bad qualities, they are bad to the core. You kind of essentialize that badness and make it into the real essence of who they are. Then it's very difficult for you to change later on and be flexible and go with the flow of things and see how the world actually changes. So remember that this is your perception of things. They aren't actually like that. What they are like, we just don't know. So you allow the possibility in the future of allowing them that possibility to grow and change, and then you can change the perception of them. So this is an important preliminary remark about what it means that we don't see any good qualities in others. So this is how this one goes. And how, friends, should resentment be removed towards the person whose bodily and verbal behavior are impure, and who does not gain an opening of the mind, placidity of mind, from time to time? Suppose a sick, afflicted, gravely ill person was traveling along a highway, and the last village behind him and the next village ahead of him were both far away. He would not obtain suitable food and medicine or a qualified attendant. He would not get to meet the leader of the village district. Another man traveling along the highway might see him and arouse sheer compassion, sympathy, and tender concern for him, thinking, "Oh, may this man obtain suitable food, suitable medicine, and a qualified attendant. May he get to meet the leader of the village district. For what reason? So that this man does not encounter calamity and disaster right here." So too, when a person's bodily and verbal behavior are impure, and he does not gain from time to time an opening of the mind, placidity of mind, on that occasion one should arouse compassion, sheer compassion, sympathy, and tender concern for him or her, thinking, "Oh, may this venerable one abandon bodily misbehavior and develop good bodily behavior. May he abandon verbal misbehavior and develop good verbal behavior. May he abandon mental misbehavior and develop good mental behavior." For what reason? So that with the breakup of the body after death, they will not be reborn in the plane of misery, in a bad destination, in the lower world, even in hell. In this way, resentment towards that person should be removed. So this is the way to deal with somebody when you can't see any good qualities. You see them as if they are sick, someone who is ill, someone who is kind of heading towards lots of suffering. If you don't sort out that illness, what's going to happen to them? Well, they might eventually die. This is the nature of illness. Either you get better or you die. which is that famous saying that, many of you heard the saying before, of course. Ajahn Brahm loves this saying. He says, and it's a really nice one. It's when Ajahn Brahm was ill, he was in hospital in Thailand, and these hospitals in the northeast of Thailand back in the 1970s were pretty rough places, very simple. The northeast was the most backward place of Thailand, and Thailand in those days wasn't a very wealthy country at all. So he was in hospital, and he had typhoid or typhus, scrub typhus I think it's called. He was in hospital, and then he was really, really ill. He could barely walk, that's how ill he was. One of the nice things about Ajahn Brahm, of course, it also tells that he was so ill at that time, and then he just lies down and decides to meditate, and he gets into a beautiful state of meditation in the midst of his kind of most powerful, the worst illness that he has ever had. This is the power of meditation. Yeah, you withdraw from the body, and then you're able to experience all the bliss and happiness in the world, regardless of that illness. But what happened one day, he was ill, and then one day Ajahn Chah was Ajahn Brahm's teacher in Thailand, very famous meditation master in Thailand, maybe perhaps the most famous meditation monk in Thailand in the 20th century. And one day he came to visit Ajahn Brahm in hospital, and Ajahn Brahm, wow, Ajahn Chah is coming to visit me. Wow, what a wonderful thing. And then Ajahn Chah opens his mouth, and he looks at him, and he looks really bad, right? It looks like he's on the way out. So he looks at him and says to Ajahn Brahm, he says, Brahm, either you're going to get better or you will die here. And then he goes off. Yeah, that's it. That's the hospital visit. And Ajahn Brahm feels kind of deflated. Yeah, this is the great master coming to support me, lift me up. And this is what he says. But actually, it is, it certainly is true, right? You can't deny the truth of that. But also, it's just sometimes when you say things as they actually are, the reality of things, it actually kind of breaks through some of that delusion of life. And it kind of, when you break through the delusion, often that kind of gives sense to a release as well. You can release, you don't have to pretend anymore. This is actually the way things are. Okay, I'm going to die. So what? I'm a Buddhist monk. If I die, it's not a big deal. I've lived life well. Death is to be expected anyway. And you kind of breathe a sigh of relief afterwards. So anyway, so that is just that, this is the same thing here, yeah? So this is the kind of thing that we're looking at here. If somebody is really bad, you look upon them as an ill, a sick person. Yeah, they are sick because they're moving towards suffering in the future. And what a wonderful way that is to look at somebody who is a real scallywag, a really person with many bad qualities. What a beautiful thing that is to do. Because when you look at somebody who is sick, let's say you have a family member or a friend who is sick, what do you do? Yeah, what you do is you care for them. Yeah, you are kind towards them. You go and visit them in hospital or whatever it is that is required. Why? Because it's not really their fault that they are sick. You don't go blaming them, saying, you terrible, you did all these mistakes, you shouldn't have got sick, that's your fault, I'm not going to have any compassion for you. That's not how we feel. Sickness often just comes. We don't know when it's going to arise. You have a cancer in your body, it doesn't really feel like it's your fault. It isn't your fault, it's just life happening. Yeah. And so it's easy to see why we should have compassion to sick people. It makes sense. It happens naturally when you see people who are sick. But the point here is that if you are mentally out of your mind doing bad things, it's exactly the same thing. You're also sick. You are sick. You have been conditioned. But instead of your physical body being conditioned to being sick, it is your mental body, your mental life that has been conditioned in a negative way. But actually, it is exactly the same thing. This was the thing I was talking about yesterday, about being able to, forgive people and let go of things, because you realize the conditioned nature of our personalities. We are trapped in our personalities, so to speak. So when you see it that way, you look at people as, they're in front of you. Maybe they are shouting at you or telling you off, blaming you for something you haven't done, or maybe robbing your house or whatever. And you look at them and you realize, actually, they are sick. Yeah. There's a problem. They have a problem. The problem is theirs, it's not yours. Okay, I have to suffer a bit as well, but I can deal with that. Yeah? And then you look at that person in a very different light. Instead of being self-centered, focusing, oh no, I am suffering because of the other person. You are instead turning the whole thing around and looking at their suffering instead. And then compassion can arise rather than feeling victimized by that person. It's a very powerful, very beautiful way of dealing with people who are difficult. And it works, right? This is the whole point. It really does work. But you have to train your mind to look at things in a new way, in a different way. And then actually it starts to starts to happen by itself. So here, just to bring out this simile a little bit, because I think we can probably maybe say a little bit more about this simile here. So here, here the person is sick, right? This is here just means that you are behaving badly. You don't obtain suitable food or medicine. What is suitable food and medicine? And suitable medicine is basically good teachings. Yeah, you meet somebody who gives you teachings that kind of give you a spiritual uplift or a mental uplift in life. That is what here is the medicine. It's like the Buddha is often compared to a doctor, a physician. He sees that we are suffering and he gives you the solution to the suffering. Whether that suffering is mental or physical is kind of irrelevant. So you haven't got access to good teachings. And because you haven't got that, also here you haven't got a qualified attendant. The qualified attendants are the Kalyana Mittas. Kalyana Mitta, the good friends. Mitta means friend. Kalyana means like beautiful or good. So good friends. And this is one of those key ingredients, as I was saying on the other day, on the Buddhist path, to have Kalyana Mittas, because that is where you get the good teachings from. There's lots of people in the world who would never say anything useful to you, but then there are a few who will say things that are incredibly useful. You read the word of the Buddha and think, wow, this is beautiful. This actually makes people happy in a deep sense. Whereas a lot of what you hear in the world doesn't actually drags you down, rather makes you happy. So they are choosing our friends, choosing who we hang out with is such an important part of the Buddhist path. Having those Kalyana Mittas who actually are able to say things that are useful in our lives. Who are these Kalyana Mittas? Well, Kalyana Mitta number one is the Buddha. Yes, exactly, the Buddha, right? The Buddha is number one Kalyana Mitta. He is the foundation, from a Buddhist point of view, of the whole Buddhist path. It starts with the Buddha. And then, of course, you find other people who have practiced the path correctly in the right way, who have similar kind of insights, who are in the Pali Buddhism often called the Sappurisa or superior people. People who have, and sometimes it's hard to know exactly who they are, but generally people who lift you up and kind of point you in the right direction. They are the good people to hang around. This is very important. It is so important, in fact, that it becomes the foundation in many ways of the entire spiritual life. And as I said, the hardest part in Buddhism is to commit and persevere. This is the hardest part. Hardest part is not to understand the teachings and all of that. And to be able to really commit and persevere, you need that continuous input from the Kalyana Mitta, the attendant, the attendant on the sick person, the Buddha, your spiritual friends, or whatever it is. And as you get that continuous input, you're able to commit and persevere on the path of the spiritual practice. Yes. And then, of course, when you see somebody like that, walking along, not getting the attendance, not get to meet the leader of the village district, maybe that's the Buddha, I'm not sure, then of course you have a sense of, you feel compassion and sympathy, just like you feel for somebody who is physically ill. And of course, one of the things to remember in all of this is that when people are sick, if you are a doctor, I don't know if you are any doctors here, but if you are a doctor, sometimes you can't cure people. Sometimes people have incurable illnesses. It doesn't matter how good you are as a doctor, there are some illnesses that cannot be cured. And in exactly the same way, in the spiritual path as well, there are people you will see doing all kind of crazy things, and you would like to help them. But sometimes people are completely oblivious about what's going on, and you can't really help them. So sometimes you just have to stand back and kind of almost watch them go, kind of almost like self-destruct. And then there's nothing you can do sometimes except be kind and caring. And as you are kind and caring, you're giving them the optimum chance of actually turning around and going in a different direction. But in Buddhism, there is no such thing as self-destruct. I was using that word, and it's a bit kind of misleading, because nobody really self-destructs. What happens is that they go down in a valley. They go down, and then maybe they come to, at some point they will bottom out. And then when they bottom out, they start to come up again. So there's never there's no such thing as no hope in Buddhism. There's always new hope. But right now, there may be nothing you can do. Maybe down the line somewhere, there's something you can do. So this is one of those things to remember, because it makes us less attached to the idea that we have to help others. Yes, we help when we can, but when you can't help it, then you have to let go and allow things to be. So that is the fourth way. The person who has no good qualities, and it's wonderful that there is a way of dealing with them as well. Now we come to the very last person, and this is the exact opposite. This is the person with all good qualities. How, friends, should resentment be removed towards the person whose bodily and verbal behavior are pure, and who from time to time gains an opening of the mind, placidity of mind? Suppose there were a pond with clear, sweet, cool water, clean and smooth banks, a delightful place shaded by various trees. Then a man might arrive, afflicted and oppressed by the heat, weary, thirsty, and parched. Having plunged into the pond, he would bathe and drink, and then, after coming out, he would sit or lie down in the shade of a tree right there. So too, when a person's bodily and verbal behavior are pure, and from time to time he or she gains an opening of the mind, placidity of mind, on that occasion one should attend to his pure bodily behavior, to the pure verbal behavior, and to the opening of the mind, the placidity of mind that they gain from time to time. In this way, resentment towards that person should be removed. Friends, by means of a person who inspires confidence in every way, the mind gains confidence. So here we have like the saintly person, the person full of good qualities, and then some foolish person comes along, still get angry with them, right? Doesn't matter how saintly you are, people still get angry with you. So never think that if you are good, if you are kind, that people will always treat you right. That's not going to happen. You may be the kindest person in the world, people are still going to treat you badly. And here, of course, the person we are talking about here are people like the Buddha and people who are really very highly developed mentally in terms of meditation or whatever. Still, people treat you badly. There are suttas where people go to the Buddha and they shout at him, and the Buddha, he reacts in a very cool way, of course. But still, this is the way the world operates. So don't practice a spiritual path so that everybody's going to like you. That's not going to happen. That's impossible. Practice it simply because it's right. And people will like you. In general, people will, of course, have more affection for you if you are kind and a good person, in general, but not always. So this is the thing, and this, of course, is the problem, is that sometimes we do get upset, even though people are very, very pure. And sometimes that has to do with us and not the other person. So this is really the problem. And very often, one of the wonderful things about being in the presence of a spiritual teacher who is very powerful, they act like almost like a kind of mirror. You may have heard this expression being used before. They act like a mirror to you because they react in a very different way than what you would expect. If you're angry with them, they don't get angry back. They just look at you as if you are a little bit, they feel almost like compassion for you because you're angry. And because they don't react in the way that you expect, you start looking at yourself. You start thinking, wait, maybe I'm at fault here, Maybe I have got this all wrong. So that in that sense, they become a mirror to you because you look back at yourself rather than looking at them instead. This is the power of people who are very spiritual, who have gone a long way in the development of their mind. It is easier for you to develop yourself in the presence because you see yourself more clearly. You don't have the usual reactions that we have between people in the world of attachment and anger and all these kind of things. So it is very, very useful to be around people like that. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We'll see what happens. So this is the saintly person. So what happens here, just to have a look at this simile here as well, you come to this pond, there's no algae and water plants. Remember the other pond had algae and water plants, there's no algae and water plants here. So there's nothing wrong with this. All you have is beautiful water, clear, sweet, cool water with smooth banks around it. So you come to this pond and you just dive in. No need to look in the right place because everything is beautiful. And then after having dived in and cooled down and drunk the water, you come out and you lie down in the shade of the various trees that are there. And this is this interesting idea, you lie down in the shade. Why do you do that? And the reason, of course, is because here is somebody with lots of wonderful qualities. So you decide, well, this is the kind of person I should hang around. Yeah, I should make this kind of people my friend. Maybe you take them as a teacher even because of their superior qualities. At the very least, you take them as a kalyana mitra, a good friend on the spiritual path. So you hang around there, you stay with them because it is such a delightful place to be in the company of good people. So this is what that simile is about. And at the very bottom there, it says that, when you are around people like that, friends by means of a person who inspires confidence in every way, the mind gains confidence. And this is the power of, of people who have developed their minds, is that when you are in their presence, you feel that there's something powerful going on. There's something different. And this is the beauty of this. And in the sutta, as it says, just seeing an arahant is somebody who has walked the Buddhist path all the way to the end, abandoned all their defilements, and because they have no defilements, all they have are good qualities, metta, friendliness, compassion, peace, all of these beautiful things. So when you see, just seeing a person like that is a wonderful thing, because when you see somebody who is like that, their inner qualities are reflected in the outer conduct. You can see that, and you just see it and think, wow, look at that. There's something else in this world, something I didn't know could possibly exist. And that lifts you up and gives you hope that there is something in the world more than just the ordinary life that we have to go through, which sometimes seems so pointless. But here, there is a potential. The human potential is kind of visible in front of your eyes, and you know, I too can do the same thing with my life. They are a person, I am a person. If they can do it, I too can do it. And this is the power of that example on the spiritual path. So it's wonderful, it's important, for spiritual practice to be kept alive, that we still have people like that in the world who practice the path fully and then are examples for everyone else to follow. And it becomes very, very powerful when that happens. So that is the saintly person. And sometimes, I have met some of these people, I believe. I'm pretty sure, actually. And it's wonderful when you are in the company of people like that. And one of the often what happens when you meet people like that is that you feel really relaxed, you feel really at ease, you feel really good in the company because they don't judge you, they don't, you feel kind of, oh yeah, I can just relax and be myself with these people. And sometimes they may have kind of do strange things that are kind of unusual. But because of their presence, because of the way they are, it's kind of no problem at all. There was one monk I met in Thailand a couple of years ago now, and he doesn't say very much. He sits there on this big chair. People have given him this big chair. This little monk, he's not very tall, very kind of small little monk, sits on this big chair with kind of very peaceful and kind of kind expression on his face. And he sits on this big chair, and all these people are sitting around, and they're just soaking up the atmosphere. That's all they're doing. He doesn't say much. He says, he gives you a little bit of a blessing, perhaps. If you ask a question, he gives you a simple answer. People just sit there to soak up the atmosphere because the atmosphere is so good. And it allows you, it is feeling that there is something in this world, there's something more to life than the ordinary things that you see around you. Just that kind of presence is very powerful. I'll tell you a little bit more afterwards about what he told me, because I was there visiting him. He gave me a lot of time because he's been to Bodhinyana Monastery, and all I have to say, I'm a disciple of Ajahn Brahm. He said, oh yeah, no problem, okay. So he gives me hours of his time, It's really nice. So if you ever go to Thailand, you visit some of these monks, especially people like this particular monk, Ajahn Ganha, just say you're a disciple of Ajahn Brahm, right? And then he might give you extra time. But first of all, you have to make sure that you are a real disciple of Ajahn Brahm, first of all. Otherwise, you make bad karma. Okay, so that is the sutta on how to overcome ill will and anger and negative mind states. And I will stop with that sutta and now move on to the next one. So now, having looked at how to overcome the negative states of mind, the next one is now to move on to the developing the opposite, which are the positive states of mind. In Pali language, metta, maitri in In Sanskrit language, the word metta is derived from mitta, which I just said before, kalyana mitta, same word. So it means like friendliness, goodwill. I think goodwill is a nice translation, often translated into English as loving kindness. But all of these translations are acceptable for this word. So once the negative sides are gone, now is the time to develop the metta. You cannot develop the metta as long as you feel anger or resentment or negativity towards a person. So now I want to have a look at that. Actually, maybe I can straight away, this particular monk who I was just talking about, and not only this monk, other monks too, who are very well known, I have asked the same question. I asked him, because he has such a very kind of pleasant feeling about him. I asked him, how should one practice metta? It's a very straight, simple question, right? How should one go about practicing metta? This is what I asked him. Sometimes when you ask people that, you expect them to say, yeah, you sit down, you close your eyes, you say, may all beings be happy and well, that kind of stuff. But no, he doesn't say that. What he said, and this is kind of the beauty of some of the people who are very spiritually developed, is that this answer often very simple. Yeah, very, very simple answers, and very straight to the point, practical, pragmatic, things that you can actually do, not kind of intellectual or philosophical things at all. And he said to me that what you should do to practice metta, you should every day when you wake up in the morning, you should ask yourself, what can I do for the world today? Yeah, that's all you have to do. What should I do? What can I do for the world today? How can I be a benefit to the people around me? How can I be a blessing for myself and everyone else? That is what you should ask yourself. And that is how you practice metta. Didn't say anything about what to do in meditation practice. Didn't say anything about anything more profound. Yeah, oh, you have this enormous feeling of goodwill for everyone. Nothing about that. Just very simple. What can I do today to be a blessing for the world? And that is where metta starts. Yeah. And it never stops there. You keep on doing that all the time. This is what you take with you all the way through your life when you have metta. It begins there and it ends there with how you treat the people and the world around you. That is how it starts out. And it's so important to remember that. You cannot just sit down and do your meditation practice and wish everyone well just like that. It has to start off with the really basic things. And the basic things are how we treat people in our daily life. Do we treat people with kindness, with friendliness, with compassion, with goodwill? And that is where we build up the basis upon which the metta meditation then is built afterwards. So it's actually very obvious when you think about it, but still we often forget this. And of course that metta that we develop in ordinary life, it is precisely very closely linked to keeping the precepts, to the morality I was talking about before, and all of those things. And as you build that up, then you find you can sit down in your meditation. Then you can actually, it enables you then to spread out goodwill to everyone anywhere in the world when you do that in the right way. So that was this, I think, very beautiful and pragmatic advice from this very saintly person who I met, and other people who've been saying the same thing. And of course the Buddha also says the same thing. It just depends. You have to read the suttas in the right way and broadly enough, and then you find out the Buddha actually says exactly the same thing as well. So this is what I want to have a look at now, and this is a sutta called the Kosambhya Sutta, found in the middle-length sayings of the Buddha, Majjhima 48. And here the Buddha talks about those qualities that lead to love, respect, conduce to cohesion, non-dispute, concord. Here is samaggi, I think, so harmony, and unity at the end. So these are qualities that lead to all of these wonderful things. So if we want to have concord in the monastery, in the Buddhist society, in Perth, in Western Australia, in the entire world, in the galaxy, in the universe, this is the stuff that we need to cultivate. Because remember, there are aliens out there as well. We're going to have kindness towards the aliens as well. Because this is kind of fascinating. The Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he said that not only is there this solar system, we are here now, the moon, the sun, and the planet Earth, there are billions of solar systems out there. is actually in the suttas. Yeah, you read it. I remember reading it, and initially when you read those things, you think, yeah, okay, whatever, and not sure about that. And you kind of put it to one side because you don't know what to make of it. Yeah, what is that doing in there? It sounds kind of strange. And then when you read it a few times, you start to wonder, what is this doing in there? Where does it come from? Yeah, and after a while, you realize that this text actually is about 2,500 years old. It exists in different languages, in Chinese, in Tibetan, other languages. These are languages that have been separated from each other for roughly 2,300 years. This text actually is really ancient, and it's talking about beings, about aliens. Yeah, that's why I'm talking about aliens. I'm not just making this up. This is Buddhism, right? Aliens. I'm not just saying this just kind of for fun. This is the real deal. So eventually you come to the conclusion that the Buddha actually knew things about the world, about the cosmos, about the universe, that only very recently we have discovered through scientific means. It's kind of mind-boggling. How on earth could a Buddha have known about these things? How is that even possible? And of course, the way that this is possible is because the Buddha, he had done things like remembering his past lives. And when you remember your past lives far enough, from different vantage points, from different angles, eventually you put everything together and you see that this is actually how the universe operates. And there are a few suttas like that, but are even more mind-boggling. You wonder, how can that be in there? And the only way that I can explain it, maybe it seems irrational to some people, but the only way, to me, it makes any sense, is that the Buddha actually recalled his past lives, and through that recollection, he was able to see how these things actually work. Anyway, I'm getting really sidetracked now, but it's kind of cool, right? So you got to say a few cool things as well, otherwise you lose people's attention. So that's great. So anyway, let's get back to the main thing again. This is all about metta, how to be kind towards others. And so how do we create cohesion? How do we have harmony even with the aliens? Yeah? How do we have harmony with everyone? And by the way, aliens, they're much less alien than you think. If you were to meet an alien, you'd probably shake their hand and they'd just feel like any other person you met before. It wouldn't make much difference. So perhaps there are some aliens here, right? If they look just like us, yeah. No, I'm just joking. I don't think there are any aliens here. But if they were here, it wouldn't make any difference, right? They would just be here learning the Dhamma, meditating just like everyone else. No problem. So how do we do this? What happens here? And then, so here, this is the story, the narrative behind this, that there had been an argument in the monastic order, that monks had been arguing with each other, and there had been some disruption, and then the Buddha wants to teach them, well, how do we actually create harmony in the monastic order? And this is what this teaching is about. There's arguments everywhere, right? Even in monastic orders, even where you're supposed to not have any arguments, because it's just human nature. You can't avoid these things entirely. You can reduce it, but never avoid it entirely. Then the Blessed One is the Buddha, addressed the bhikkhus, the monks, thus. Monks, there are these 6 principles of cordiality that create love and respect and conduce to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. What are the 6? Here, a monk maintains bodily acts of loving kindness. This is metta, both in public and in private, towards his companions in the holy life. This is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. Yeah, very simple. You maintain bodily acts of loving kindness. Nothing very lofty, nothing about may all beings be happy and well. But very simple, you act with kindness towards the people around you. Yeah, and a couple of interesting things here. The first one, of course, is that you do it in public and in private. Yeah, and of course that means we have a sense of integrity about our morality. We don't put on a show in front of others, but it's part of who we are as a person. It's part of our personality that we are kind. When you go back to your kuti, you don't kind of sit there thinking, yeah, I will be kind to them, but I really don't want to be kind. Yeah, my kuti is, for those of you who don't know, it's like the huts that we live in as monks. So you always have the sense of integrity in your morality. You are the same outward as you are in private. You are the same towards one person as you are to many people. You try to live with integrity. So this is a very important part of morality. So public and private is the same. Yeah, and one of the interesting things here, the next one, is the fact that it says towards your companions in the holy life. So that my companions in the holy life is Venerable Bodhidharma, Venerable Pasada, right? And maybe the teddy bear at the end. I'm not sure about the teddy bears, but so they look brown. They might fit in fairly well. But so you have, and it's interesting, isn't it? Why should I have compassion and metta for my why should I kind of single them out? Why should they be number one? What about you guys? Does that mean I can just kind of be nasty towards everyone else? Is that what it means? It doesn't mean that, right? Obviously it doesn't mean that. That's fairly obvious. So what does it mean? And what it means is that those people who are closest to you, those people that you interact with on a daily basis, are often the ones where there's also most friction. It's like family life. Yeah, family life, they are the people you love the most, but also the people who often get on your nerves the most because they do the same thing every day. Yeah, they have the habits, and you have to bear up with that habit every day. That's why family members can be the most irritating. Oh no, please don't do that again. I don't. So this is what happens, can happen, doesn't always happen, but can happen in family life. And generally speaking, with people who are close to you. So very often we need to put in an extra effort with the people who are closest to us. Yeah, and if your family life, if your life with your fellow monastics, if your life with the people who are closest to you, if that is smooth and harmonious, it is actually very easy to extend it to other people. Yeah, and that is why we should always start off with the people who are closest to us, our family members, our parents, our brother and sister. I'm thinking for myself now, brother, sister, 2 parents, a few nephews and nieces, and of course my monastic friends. And then you can be kind to other people. It's very easy for me to be kind to everyone here. Yeah, I only see you very rarely. I don't see that often. Some of you I've never seen before, no idea. Maybe never meet you again. It's quite simple. But to those people who are close to you, it is actually much more difficult. And then you give that out to everyone else. And this is interesting. Very often when we talk about living a moral and good life in our society, sometimes we talk about being kind of a social activist, yeah, of doing what is right in the world, or kind of, protesting against unreasonable conduct and unfairness in society, and kind of standing up for the environment, all those kind of things. And all of that is important. All of that matters. Of course, if we see injustice, if we think there is a problem in the world, it's good to do something about it. But remember that even more important than that is how we deal with people in our ordinary life. Yeah, how do we interact with each other? Are we kind to each other on a personal level? That is far more important. Sometimes you see people who put a lot of emphasis in kind of social action and kind of getting the world right, but they forget in their personal life to be kind and compassionate. And that is not going to work on the spiritual path. Far more important that those immediate interactions we have with people around us, they are far more important for our spiritual progress than the big things in the world, looking after the climate and the environment and all of these kind of things. Ideally, of course, we should do both, yeah? But please don't just go down the road of social justice and all that kind of stuff, because if you just do that, it's not going to work. Of course, if you are here anyway, you're already aware of that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. I'm just making that point, because sometimes people get their priorities wrong here. And when you get your priorities wrong, you're not going to make as good progress as you otherwise would. So that is interesting. So make that. And must admit, I have made a lot of effort of that in my life as well. Not just, I try my very best to be, kind and compassionate to my fellow monastics. Sometimes, no doubt, I get a bit grumpy or whatever. That's just life. But I also try to be, to do same thing with my family as well. Yeah, as a monk, I try to be kind and reasonable with my parents especially. It's a very important aspect of the Buddhist practice to remember your parents and to treat them well. This is kind of very much, it's not just sometimes we, in the West, we think this is kind of an Asian thing, yeah, you look after your parents, but actually it's a Buddhist thing, it's a spiritual thing to do that. And I think even in Western society, we all agree that anyone who is a upstanding or a reasonable member of society will look after the elders and our parents in particular. And it's very powerful. If you do that consistently and you do it well, it actually has very powerful results, both for your parents but also for yourself. Because your parents are so close to us, there's often a bit of friction there because of long history and all these kind of things. And if you're able to turn this around and be kind and deal with them in a good way, it can have a very powerful effect on your own spiritual development because you are making very strong karma, very powerful karma with those people who are so close to you. It's interesting, you read the sutta as the Buddha talks about right view. Yeah, right view, right outlook is one of the important parts of the Buddhist teachings. And one little phrase in there, for those of you not so familiar with these teachings, one little phrase in there says, there is mother and father. Yeah, there is mother and father. You think, yes, there's mother and father, right? Yeah, sure, okay. And of course, there is a point to that. It doesn't mean that there is mother and father, just that. But it means, in the context of what it is said, that your mother and father are very powerful fields of merit. You can make a lot of demerit and feel really bad about yourself if you treat them in the wrong way. But you can also, the opposite side of the coin is that you can make a lot of good merit by doing what is right. So remember that. It means that you put a little bit of extra effort in to how you deal with your parents and those people who are closest to you. Anyway, so that is the idea of treating people around you, yeah, with bodily acts of kindness, loving kindness in public and private towards your companions in the holy life, whoever is close to you, essentially. And then you have cohesion, unity, harmony, yeah? Harmony, samagga or samaggi in Pali is this word which means both harmony by coming together, but also harmony in the sense of not having too much conflict in that society at the same time. Okay, let's go on to the next one here. Again, a bhikkhu maintains verbal acts of loving kindness, both in public and in private, towards his companions in the holy life. This too is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. Yeah, so our speech, again, we can use our speech skillfully or unskillfully. It is so easy often to say the wrong thing sometimes. But if we use our speech as a gift to other people, think of your speech as a potential gift. Yeah, every time you open your mouth, you can say something useful or friendly or kind, and you can give something to others just by the way you speak. Yeah, so every time, what a wonderful thing that is, that we have the opportunity to give a gift every time we open our mouth. A lot of the time, it's best not to say anything, yeah? You know what I mean? Just remember, this is not the... sometimes if I open my mouth now, what comes out is not going to be all that useful, so you just remain quiet. Being quiet is often very, very good policy if you're going to practice the spiritual path well. But when the attitude is right, you feel things are going right, there's always that beautiful opportunity to give a gift through the way you speak to others. Yeah, so look at people in the world. Everybody wants to have gifts. Everybody wants to be treated well. Everybody wants to hear something kind and nice. And it's in your power to give that to other people. What a wonderful thing that is. So please take that opportunity. And when you take that, you really create that sense of unity and harmony in society, in your family, in everywhere. And this is kind of the power of these things, that you may do a small little act and it has this ripple effect going out. Somebody else feels good. They cannot pass that on to somebody else, and it ripples out into society. It's like the Buddha. The Buddha lived 2,500 years ago, and there are still hundreds of millions of Buddhists in the world still following these teachings. Yeah. There's an incredible ripple effect of one person's goodness 2,500 years ago spreads out. And all of us, we have the opportunity to be part of that ripple effect by doing what is good and doing what is right in this way. So remember, kind of Buddhist ideas of right speech, speaking gently here. Speech that goes to the heart, that people want to hear. speech that creates unity. In other words, you don't talk down about other people, but speech that creates harmony, speech that is truthful and accurate, and finally, speech that is useful, that is kind of to be treasured. In other words, things like the Dhamma and these kind of things. So that is the right speech for you. And then we have the next one is to maintain mental acts of loving kindness, both in public and in private, towards your companions in the holy life. And this too is a principle of cordiality that creates love and respect and conduces to cohesion, to non-dispute, to concord, and to unity. And of course, that is the most difficult thing, is to actually have mental acts of loving kindness. But I have been giving you a few hints today and this morning. No, what time is it now? Is this morning, isn't it? Yeah, yesterday evening. And so and using those little ideas that you have been learning to look at the good side in other people, learning to forgive the negative sides by understanding that they have a degree of illness, if you like. Using those tricks of the mind is always possible, not always, often possible to have a sense of loving kindness, metta, towards the people around you. And this is very powerful. If you're able to change your mind, if you're able to change the way you perceive the world, the way you think about the people around you, this is by far the most powerful aspect of morality. Because if you change the way you think, everything else tends to fall into place. If you think differently, if you think with kindness, you're going to speak with kindness, you're going to act with kindness. It comes as a matter of course. And if you think with kindness, it means that your entire personality is directed towards kindness. Then when you come on a meditation retreat and you sit down and you just relax, all that goodness comes back to you because that is the habit that you have built up. So because that is the habit you have built up, then when you sit down, you naturally feel good about yourself. So very, very useful to develop the mind in this way, to have habitual thoughts of kindness to the people around you. Kindness and forgiveness together become this very powerful source for yourself and also for other people, obviously. Anyway, I think I will stop there. It's only a couple of minutes to 10 o'clock. And it's a good point to, I think, to stop. And then we can continue this later on this afternoon when we have the very last session, which is at 1:30. Is that right? Yeah? So great. Okay, so that is all for now, and we'll see you again at 1:30 this afternoon.